The day Helena Montgomery agreed to marry the Devil of Stormhaven, she wore her mother's faded lavender gown and smiled as though her heart was not quietly breaking into pieces she would never fully recover. The chapel stood cold and grey against the December sky, a small stone building on the edge of the village where her family had lived for 6 generations. Frost clung to the window panes. The pews held no guests. There were no flowers, no music, no whispered congratulations. Only the vicar, her trembling younger sister Margaret, and the stranger who had arrived that morning with a marriage contract already signed. Helena had read the contract 3 times the night before, sitting by the dying fire in the library while her father's cough echoed through the empty house. The terms were simple. She would become the Duchess of Stormhaven. Her family's debts would vanish. Their crumbling estate in Yorkshire would receive enough funds to survive another generation, and she would never ask the Duke for anything beyond what he chose to give. Love was not mentioned in the contract. She had not expected it to be. Now, standing at the altar with her hands clasped tightly before her, Helena kept her eyes fixed on the vicar's kind face. She had not yet looked at the man beside her. She was afraid that if she did, her courage would fail entirely. The Duke had arrived with no introduction, no courtship, no gentle words. He had sent his solicitor 3 weeks earlier with a letter written in sharp, deliberate script. The letter had stated that the Duke of Stormhaven required a wife of good breeding and quiet disposition. Helena Montgomery had been recommended to him. If she accepted his proposal, he would settle her family's debts and provide an annual allowance for her parents. If she refused, he would find another. No mention of affection, no promise of happiness, a transaction, nothing more. Helena's father had wept when she told him she would accept. Her mother, bedridden for the past 2 years, had pressed a trembling hand to Helena's cheek and whispered, "You are braver than any of us deserve." Now the vicar was speaking words that felt distant and unreal, as though they were happening to someone else. Helena heard herself make the responses. Her voice sounded calm, steady, the voice of a woman who had learned long ago that tears accomplished nothing. Then the vicar turned to the Duke and asked him to repeat his vows. And for the first time, Helena allowed herself to look at the man she was marrying. Lucian Sterling, Duke of Stormhaven, was not what she had imagined. She had expected an older man, perhaps portly and red-faced, a wealthy nobleman, seeking a young wife to warm his bed and manage his household. The letters from his solicitor had been cold and efficient, suggesting a man of rigid practicality rather than passion. But the man standing beside her was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead and eyes the color of winter steel. His jaw was hard, his mouth set in a line that suggested he had not smiled in years. He wore black, as though already in mourning for something, and his presence filled the small chapel with an intensity that made Helena's breath catch in her throat. He was perhaps 30 years old, handsome, in a severe and dangerous way, and utterly, terrifyingly cold. When he spoke his vows, his voice was low and precise. He did not stumble over the words. He did not glance at Helena. He looked straight ahead, as though the vicar's face held the answer to some question no one else could hear. Helena felt a chill settle deep in her bones. The ceremony ended. The vicar pronounced them man and wife. The register was signed, and then the Duke of Stormhaven turned to Helena with eyes that revealed nothing at all. "It is done," he said quietly. "We leave for Stormhaven within the hour." He walked past her and out of the chapel, without offering his arm. Margaret rushed forward and caught Helena's hands. "Sister, are you all right?" "He did not even look at you." Helena forced herself to smile. "It does not matter, Meg. What matters is that father can pay his creditors and mother can keep her medicines. What matters is that you and Thomas will have a future. But at what cost to you?" Helena did not answer. She did not know how to explain that the cost had been calculated the moment she realized her family was drowning, and she was the only one who could throw them a rope. She had not told them everything. She had not told anyone about the second letter that had arrived 2 days after the first, written in the same sharp script, but addressed to her alone. "You should know what you are agreeing to. I am not a kind man. I do not want a wife. I want a duchess who will manage my household and bear me an heir. I will provide for you. I will protect you from any threat. But I will never love you. If you can accept that, come to Stormhaven. If you cannot, burn this letter, and we will never speak of this again." Helena had read those words by candlelight, and felt something strange twist in her chest. Not fear, not despair, but a quiet, unexpected relief. The Duke was not pretending to offer something he could not give. He was not lying to her. In a world where men made promises they never intended to keep, he was offering her the truth. She had burned the letter, as he instructed, but she had also memorized every word. An hour later, Helena climbed into the Duke's carriage, while Margaret stood on the steps of their crumbling manor house, tears streaming down her face. Helena pressed her hand to the window, and kept it there, until the carriage rounded the bend, and her sister disappeared from view. The Duke sat across from her, his long legs stretched before him, his expression unreadable. He did not speak. He did not ask if she was comfortable, or if she had eaten, or if she needed anything at all. He simply watched her with those grey eyes that seemed to see everything and reveal nothing. The carriage rolled north. The journey to Stormhaven took 4 days. 4 days of rattling wheels and frozen roads and inns, where the innkeepers fell over themselves to serve the Duke of Stormhaven. 4 days of sitting across from a man who spoke perhaps 20 words in total, who took his meals alone in his room, who never once asked Helena a single question about herself. She learned to read his silences. She learned that when his jaw tightened, he was thinking about something unpleasant. When his fingers drummed against his knee, he was impatient. When he stared out the carriage window at the grey winter landscape, he was somewhere far away, in a place Helena could not reach. On the second day, snow began to fall. By the third, the roads had grown treacherous, and their progress slowed to a crawl. Helena spent the hours watching the countryside change from the rolling hills of Yorkshire to the wilder, bleaker landscape of the Scottish border. On the 4th day, they crossed into the Highlands. Helena had never been to Scotland. She had read about it in books, tales of misty mountains and dark lochs and ancient castles that held secrets in their stones. The reality was both more beautiful and more desolate than she had imagined. The hills rose sharp and jagged against the winter sky, their peaks hidden in clouds. The trees were bare and black, their branches reaching toward the carriage like skeletal fingers. Snow covered everything, muffling the world in white silence. "This is Stormhaven land," the Duke said suddenly, and Helena startled at the sound of his voice. It was the first time he had spoken directly to her in hours. She looked out the window and saw a village clustered in a valley below them, stone cottages with smoke rising from their chimneys, a small church with a steeple that pointed toward heaven, people moving through the snow, wrapped in wool and fur. "It is beautiful," she said honestly. The Duke made a sound that might have been agreement or dismissal. "It is harsh. The winters are long. The people are proud. They will not trust you simply because you are my wife. You will have to earn their respect." Helena turned to look at him. "I know how to earn respect, Your Grace." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or curiosity, but it vanished before she could name it. "We shall see." The carriage continued through the village, and up a long, winding road that climbed the hillside. And then Helena saw Stormhaven Castle. It rose from the cliffs like something out of a legend, dark stone and high towers silhouetted against the winter sky. The sea crashed against the rocks far below, sending spray into the air that froze and glittered like diamonds. The castle walls were thick and ancient, built to withstand sieges and storms and the passage of centuries. It was not a place for warmth or comfort. It was a fortress, built by men who had expected the world to come against them, and it was now her home. The carriage passed through the gates and into a courtyard, where servants stood waiting in neat lines, their breath misting in the cold air. Helena saw a housekeeper in black, a butler with silver hair, footmen, maids, a woman who looked like a cook, and more staff than she could count. The Duke descended from the carriage first. He did not offer Helena his hand. She climbed down on her own, her boots sinking into the snow, and stood facing the army of servants who would now answer to her. "Your Grace," the housekeeper stepped forward and curtsied deeply. "Welcome to Stormhaven. I am Mrs. McCrae, the housekeeper. If there is anything you require—" "Thank you, Mrs. McCrae." Helena kept her voice steady and warm. "I am grateful for your welcome. It has been a long journey, and I look forward to learning about Stormhaven and its people." Mrs. McCrae's stern face softened slightly. "The Duchess's chambers have been prepared. A fire is lit, and supper will be served whenever your grace wishes." "The Duchess will take supper in her rooms tonight," the Duke said before Helena could respond. "She is tired from the journey." It was not a question, it was not a kindness, it was a command, delivered in the same cold voice he used for everything. Helena felt a flash of irritation but swallowed it. She was exhausted, and fighting the Duke on her first night in his home seemed unwise. "Thank you," she said quietly. "That would be welcome." The Duke turned and walked into the castle without another word. Mrs. McCrae led Helena through a maze of stone corridors lit by flickering torches. The walls were lined with tapestries depicting battles and hunts. The floors were worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The air smelled of wood smoke and something older, something that whispered of secrets and sorrow. Her chambers were on the 3rd floor, in a tower that overlooked the sea. The rooms were larger than any Helena had ever called her own. A sitting room with a fireplace tall enough to stand in, a bedroom with a massive 4-poster bed draped in deep blue velvet, a dressing room with mirrors and wardrobes, and a small private study with a desk positioned before a window that faced the western hills. A fire crackled in the hearth. Candles flickered on every surface. A tray of food waited on a small table. Bread, cheese, cold meat, a pot of tea. "It is lovely," Helena said, and meant it. The rooms were beautiful, if cold. Everything was clean and well kept, but she sensed no personal touch, no warmth of habitation. These were rooms that had waited a long time for someone to fill them. Mrs. McCrae hesitated by the door. "Your Grace, if I may." "Yes?" "The master is not an easy man." The housekeeper's voice was careful, measured. "He has his reasons, but if you are patient, if you are kind, you will find that Stormhaven is a good place, and its people will be loyal to you." Helena looked at the older woman and saw something in her eyes. A hope, perhaps, or a warning. "Thank you, Mrs. McCrae. I will remember that." The housekeeper curtsied and withdrew, leaving Helena alone in her new rooms. She stood at the window and watched the sun set over the western hills, painting the snow in shades of rose and gold. Somewhere in the castle, her new husband was doing whatever cold, distant dukes did in the evenings. She did not know if she would see him again that night. She did not know if she wanted to. What she did know was that she had made a bargain, and she intended to keep it. She would be the Duchess of Stormhaven. She would manage his household. She would give him an heir. But the secret she carried, the sacrifice that had brought her to this cold, windswept castle, that was something the Duke of Stormhaven would never know, no matter what it cost her. The first week at Stormhaven passed in strange, suspended silence. Helena woke each morning to a fire already crackling in the hearth, a maid named Fiona who helped her dress, and a breakfast tray left outside her door. She explored the castle's endless corridors, discovering libraries filled with leather-bound books, music rooms with dust-covered harpsichords, galleries lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors, and a great hall where suits of armor stood guard against enemies long dead. She learned the names of the servants. She learned the rhythm of the household. She learned that the Duke took his meals alone in his study, that he rode out each morning regardless of the weather, that he received reports from his estate manager each afternoon, and that he rarely spoke to anyone beyond what was strictly necessary. And she learned that her husband had no intention of visiting her bed. At first, she was relieved. The thought of lying with a man she barely knew, a man who looked at her with cold, empty eyes, had filled her with dread. But as the days passed, relief turned to confusion, and confusion to something sharper. She was his wife. He had married her to produce an heir, and yet he treated her as though she were a guest who had overstayed her welcome. On the 7th night, Helena made a decision. She dressed carefully, a gown of deep green silk that brought out the copper in her hair, her mother's pearl earrings, her hair pinned up with a few curls left to frame her face. She looked at herself in the mirror, and saw a woman who was perhaps not beautiful, but striking, a woman who had been shaped by hardship into something strong. Then she walked to the Duke's study and knocked on the door. "Enter." She pushed open the door and stepped inside. The study was vast, lined with bookshelves, and dominated by a massive desk covered in papers. A fire burned in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The Duke sat behind the desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his collar loosened, his hair slightly disheveled. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, just a moment, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps. Or something darker. "Your Grace," she said, keeping her voice steady, "I would like to speak with you." He set down his glass. "It is late. I am aware." A pause. Then he gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." Helena sat. She folded her hands in her lap and met his gaze directly. "I have been here a week. In that time, you have spoken to me perhaps 50 words. You have not asked me a single question about myself. You have not told me anything about your life, your home, or your expectations beyond what was written in your letters." She paused, gathering her courage. "I am your wife, Your Grace, not a piece of furniture you acquired at auction." Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, exactly. More like the slow awakening of interest. "You wish to be courted. I wish to be treated with basic courtesy." She kept her voice calm, though her heart was pounding. "I understand the terms of our marriage. I am not asking for love, or poetry, or grand gestures, but if we are to live together, if we are to build any kind of life, we must at least learn to speak to one another." The Duke was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair and studied her with those winter-grey eyes. "You are not what I expected." "Neither are you," she replied. "I expected an old man desperate for a young wife. Instead, I find a man who seems to have no interest in his wife at all. I wonder why you married me, Your Grace. Truly." The fire crackled in the silence. "Because I needed an heir," he said at last. "And because you were the only woman who agreed." Helena felt the words like a blow, but she did not flinch. There must have been others. "You are a duke. Any number of women would have accepted your proposal. Any number of women wanted my title and my fortune." His voice was flat, matter of fact. "You wanted nothing but to save your family. There is a difference." She had no answer for that. The Duke picked up his whiskey and took a slow sip. "I told you I am not a kind man. I meant it. I have no talent for gentleness. I do not know how to be a husband, but if you wish for conversation, I can manage that." "Then tell me something," Helena said. "Anything. Tell me why you ride out every morning regardless of the weather. Tell me why you take your meals alone. Tell me why this castle feels like a place where something died." His jaw tightened. For a long, terrible moment, she thought she had gone too far. Then he set down his glass with a click and rose from his chair. He walked to the window and stood looking out at the darkness, his back to her. "My wife died," he said quietly. 5 years ago. She was carrying our child. Both of them died, and I was the reason." Helena's breath caught in her throat. "Your Grace." Her name was Eleanor. She was kind, gentle. Everyone loved her. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, something raw and broken, that he was holding together by sheer force of will. She was not strong. "I knew that when I married her. The physicians warned me that childbirth would be dangerous. But I needed an heir, and I convinced myself she would be fine. I convinced myself that my need was more important than her life." He turned to face her, and Helena saw the truth written in every line of his face. The guilt, the self-loathing, the grief that had eaten away at him for 5 years. "She died screaming," he said. "The child was born too early. He lived for 3 hours, then he stopped breathing, and I stood in this study, in this very room, and I listened to them die." He paused. "That is why I married you, because you are strong, because the physicians examined you before I made my offer, and told me you are healthy, that your body can bear children safely. I chose you because you would not die." Helena sat very still, her mind racing. The letter, the coldness, the distance, it all made terrible, heartbreaking sense now. "You did not tell me this before we married," she said quietly. "Would you have refused?" "I do not know." She looked at her hands, then back at him. "I might have understood." "Understanding does not change what I did." He walked back to his desk, but did not sit. "I have told you the truth. You wanted conversation. Now you know why I am the man I am. If you wish to keep your distance, I will not blame you. I will provide for you. I will protect you. But I will not touch you unless you ask me to. I will not risk another woman's life for my legacy." The silence stretched between them. heavy with all the things Helena could not say. Finally, she stood. "Thank you for telling me." He looked surprised. "You are not afraid?" "Of you?" She shook her head slowly. "No, Your Grace. I am not afraid of you. I am afraid of a great many things, but you are not one of them." Something shifted in his expression. Something that might have been hope, or might have been fear. "You should be." "Perhaps." She moved toward the door, then paused. "I will see you at breakfast tomorrow. I will have Mrs. McCrae set a place for you in the morning room. You do not have to come. But I would like it if you did." She left before he could answer. The next morning, when Helena entered the morning room, the Duke was already there. He stood when she entered, stiff and formal. His hair was neatly combed, his cravat perfectly tied. He looked as though he had not slept, but he was there. "Good morning, Your Grace," Helena said, taking her seat. "Good morning." He hesitated, then sat back down. "I was not sure you would still wish me to join you after. I always keep my invitations." She poured herself tea, and offered him the pot. "Would you like some?" He stared at the teapot as though it were a foreign object. "Yes, thank you." It was a small thing, a tiny crack in the wall he had built around himself, but it was enough. That afternoon, Helena explored the west wing of the castle, and found a door that was locked. It was tucked away at the end of a corridor, half hidden behind a tapestry. The lock was old but sturdy, and when Helena tried the handle, it did not budge. "What is behind this door?" she asked Mrs. McCrae later. The housekeeper's face went carefully blank. "Nothing of importance, Your Grace. Storage rooms. The master prefers them kept locked." Helena nodded and did not press further, but she noticed the way Mrs. McCrae's hands trembled slightly as she spoke, and she filed the information away for later. The Duke had told her one truth, but there were others he was keeping hidden, and Helena intended to discover them all. 3 weeks passed. Christmas came and went with little celebration at Stormhaven. Helena decorated the great hall with evergreen boughs, and insisted on a Yule log, but the castle remained stubbornly cold and silent. The Duke gave no gifts and attended no services, though he did not prevent Helena from doing so. She wrote letters to her family. Long, detailed letters that made her life sound far more pleasant than it was. She wrote about the beauty of the Highlands, the kindness of the servants, the fascinating history of the castle. She did not write about the locked door in the west wing, or the way her husband sometimes stared at her with an expression that looked like longing and felt like grief. She did not write about the nights she lay awake, listening to the wind howl around the towers, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. In the village, she began to build a life. She visited the sick. She helped the local midwife deliver a baby during a snowstorm. She convinced the Duke to release funds for a new roof on the village school. Slowly, tentatively, the people of Stormhaven began to trust her. "You are good for them," the Duke said one evening, appearing in the doorway of the morning room, where Helena was writing letters. "They respect you." Helena looked up, startled. It was the first time he had sought her out since that night in his study. "I am glad. They are good people. You see things I do not see." He came into the room and stood by the fire, his hands clasped behind his back. "I have been lord of this land for 15 years. I have never once visited the sick or delivered a baby. That is because you are a man, and a duke, and no one expects you to." Helena set down her pen. "But someone must. These are your people, Your Grace. They need to know that you care about them. I pay my tithes. I maintain the roads and the church. I settle disputes fairly. Is that not enough?" "No." She met his eyes directly. "It is not enough. They need to know that you see them as human beings, not as obligations. They need to feel that their lord is someone they can trust." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. "You are very blunt." "My father always said it was my greatest flaw." "It is not a flaw." He moved toward her, stopping a few feet from the desk. "I have been thinking about what you said, about the castle feeling like a place where something died." Helena held her breath. "You were right." His voice was low, almost reluctant. "This castle has been a tomb for 5 years. I made it that way. I locked away everything that reminded me of her, and in doing so, I locked away everything that reminded me of living." He paused. I do not want to live in a tomb anymore. Then do not, Helena said simply. Open the doors. Let in the light. Let people visit. Host a dinner, a ball, a gathering. Let the castle be alive again. It is not that simple. It could be. She stood and faced him. You are a duke. You can do whatever you wish. The only thing stopping you is your own grief. And I understand grief, your grace. I have watched my parents lose everything they loved. I have watched my mother fade away in a sickbed. I know what it is to carry loss, but I also know that loss only wins if you let it. The Duke stared at her, and for the first time, Helena saw something other than coldness in his eyes. She saw hunger, not for her body, but for something deeper, something he had been starving for since the day his wife died. Will you help me? He asked quietly. Will you help me learn to live again? Helena felt her heart crack open, just a little. Yes, she said. I will. It was not love, it was not passion or romance, or any of the things she had once dreamed of as a girl, but it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough. February arrived with howling winds and snow that piled against the castle walls in great white drifts. The village was cut off from the outside world for nearly a week. Helena used the time to explore more of the castle, and on the fourth day of the storm, she found the portrait gallery. It was a long, narrow room on the second floor, lined with paintings of the Sterling family going back 300 years. Helena walked slowly past stern-faced dukes and elegant duchesses, knights in armor and ladies in silk, children with solemn eyes and dogs at their feet. And then she stopped. The portrait at the end of the gallery was newer than the others, its colors still vibrant. It showed a woman with golden hair and soft blue eyes, a gentle smile curving her lips. She wore a gown of pale rose, and in her hands she held a single white rose. Eleanor. Helena knew it immediately. There was something about the woman's face, a sweetness, a fragility, that matched everything the Duke had told her. This was painted 6 months before she died. Helena turned. The Duke stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. She was beautiful, Helena said quietly. Yes, she was. He walked into the gallery and stopped beside Helena, looking up at the portrait. She loved this place, the gardens especially. She planted the rose garden herself, the year we married. I have not been able to look at it since. Then perhaps it is time. Helena turned to face him. Will you show me the rose garden? He looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded. The rose garden was buried under snow, its bushes reduced to bare thorns and frozen stems. But Helena could see the bones of what it had been. A circular design, with a stone fountain at the center, paths radiating outward like the petals of a flower. In summer, she imagined, it would be glorious. I used to sit here with her, the Duke said, his voice distant. She would read poetry aloud. I would pretend to listen, but really, I was just watching her. She was so alive, so full of joy. He paused. I killed that joy. I killed her. You did not kill her. Helena's voice was firm. Childbirth killed her. A tragedy killed her. You are not God, your grace. You do not decide who lives and who dies. I should have protected her. From what? From nature? From her own body? Helena shook her head. You cannot protect people from everything. You can only love them while they are here. He turned to look at her, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. You speak as though you know something of loss. I do. Helena wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. My brother died when I was 12. Thomas, my younger brother, the one who still lives, was only a baby. But William was 10 years old, and he was my best friend. He caught a fever, and died within a week. There was nothing anyone could do. How did you bear it? I did not, for a long time. I was angry. At God, at my parents, at the physicians who could not save him, but eventually I realized that anger was not honoring his memory. It was just punishing me. She met his eyes. You have been punishing yourself for 5 years. Eleanor would not have wanted that. How do you know what she would have wanted? Because she loved you. That is what you told me. And people who love us do not want us to suffer. The Duke stared at her, and something broke open in his face. Not tears. She suspected he was not capable of tears anymore. But something. A crack in the armor. Thank you, he said hoarsely. No one has spoken to me like this in years. Everyone is too afraid. I am not afraid of you, Helena reminded him. I told you that on my first night here. I remember. He took a step closer. I am beginning to believe you. They stood together in the frozen garden, snow falling softly around them, and for the first time since she had arrived at Stormhaven, Helena felt something that might have been hope. March came, and with it the first hint of spring. The snow began to melt. The days grew longer. Green shoots pushed up through the mud in the kitchen garden, and the Duke of Stormhaven began to emerge from his self-imposed isolation. He started taking breakfast with Helena every morning. He accompanied her on visits to the village. He even agreed to host a small dinner party for the local gentry, the first social event Stormhaven Castle had seen in 5 years. You are nervous, Helena observed on the afternoon of the dinner, finding him in his study staring at a stack of paperwork without actually reading it. I am not nervous, he said. I am a duke. Dukes can be nervous. He looked up at her, and she was startled to see something almost like amusement in his eyes. You are the most infuriating woman I have ever met. I shall take that as a compliment. It was intended as one. He set down his pen. I have been thinking about something. Yes? When we married, I made a great many promises about what I would not do. I would not love you. I would not be a true husband. I would not. He stopped, struggling for words. I am not saying I can love you. I do not know if that part of me still exists, but I would like to try to be something more than a stranger who shares your name. Helena felt her heart skip. What are you asking? I am asking. He stood and walked around the desk to stand before her. I am asking if you would be willing to start again, to pretend that we are not two people bound by a contract, but two people who have just met and are discovering each other for the first time. You want to court me? I want to try? His gray eyes were serious, almost vulnerable. You deserve more than what I have given you. You deserve a husband who sees you, who values you, who... He stopped again. I cannot promise love, but I can promise effort. Helena looked at him, this tall, guarded, broken man who had locked himself away from the world for 5 years, and felt something shift inside her. She had come to Stormhaven prepared for a life of cold duty. She had not been prepared for this. Yes, she said softly. I would like that. For the first time since she had met him, the Duke of Stormhaven smiled. It was a small smile, hesitant and unpracticed, as though he had forgotten how. But it was real, and it made him look like an entirely different person. Then let us begin, he said. Will you walk with me in the garden before our guests arrive? I would be honored, Your Grace. Lucian, he said. My name is Lucian. Helena felt warmth spread through her chest. Lucian, she repeated. Then you must call me Helena. Helena? He said her name as though tasting it. It suits you. They walked together through the garden, and though the roses had not yet bloomed, Helena could see them beginning to stir. She could see everything beginning to stir. And for the first time, she allowed herself to hope that this marriage might become something more than a sacrifice. The dinner party was a modest success. 10 local families attended, lairds and their wives, a baronet, the vicar, the local physician. They arrived with expressions of barely concealed curiosity, clearly eager to see the Duke of Stormhaven's new bride, and to discover whether the rumors about his coldness were true. Helena greeted each guest warmly, guiding them to the great hall, which she had transformed with candles and flowers, and the best silver the castle possessed. She had convinced Lucian to open the doors to the formal dining room, which had been closed since Eleanor's death, and Mrs. McCrae and her staff had worked miracles with roast venison and salmon, and a towering cake that drew gasps of admiration. Lucian sat at the head of the table, stiff and silent at first. But gradually, under Helena's gentle prompting, he began to speak. He discussed the estate's agricultural improvements with a neighboring laird. He asked the vicar about the condition of the church roof. He even managed a halting compliment to Lady McAllister's gown. Helena watched him and felt something that might have been pride. You have worked wonders, Your Grace, Lady McAllister murmured to her over dessert. Everyone said the Duke was a lost cause, a recluse, a cold fish, a man who had buried himself alive. But look at him. He is almost human. He is human. Helena said quietly. He has simply been in pain for a very long time. You have brought him back to us. Lady McAllister squeezed her hand. Whatever you are doing, keep doing it. The guests departed in good spirits, and when the last carriage had rolled away down the hill, Lucian turned to Helena, with an expression she could not read. That was not terrible, he said. High praise indeed. I am not good with people. I never have been. But you made it bearable. You made it, he searched for the word, possible. That is what a wife does, I am told. A wife? He said the word as though testing it. You are my wife. I keep forgetting that. Shall I remind you? Something flickered in his eyes. Perhaps you should. They stood in the great hall, the candles burning low, the fire casting dancing shadows. The servants had withdrawn. They were alone. Lucian took a step closer. Helena? Yes? I would like to kiss you. His voice was rough, uncertain. If you would permit it. Helena's heart was pounding so loudly she was certain he could hear it. I would permit it. He leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, tentative, not the demanding kiss of a man claiming his rights, but the hesitant kiss of a man who had forgotten how to touch someone. His lips were warm, surprisingly soft. His hand came up to cup her cheek, and she felt his fingers tremble slightly against her skin. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with something that looked like wonder. I had forgotten, he said hoarsely. I had forgotten what this felt like. Kissing? Feeling. He stroked his thumb across her cheekbone. I have been dead inside for so long, but when I am with you, I feel alive. Helena reached up and covered his hand with her own. Then stay with me, stay alive. That night, for the first time since their wedding, Lucian did not retreat to his study. He sat with Helena in the morning room, and they talked until the fire burned down to embers. They talked about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. He told her about his father, a harsh man who had valued duty above all else. She told him about the day her family lost its fortune, how everything they owned had been sold to pay debts, how she had learned to survive with nothing. You are stronger than I ever was, Lucian said. Strength is not something you are born with. It is something you learn when you have no other choice. He looked at her with something that might have been admiration. I am beginning to think I did not choose you because you would survive. I think I chose you because, somewhere deep down, I knew you would save me. Helena's throat tightened. I am not trying to save you, Lucian. I am trying to know you. Perhaps that is the same thing. They parted at the door to her chambers. He did not ask to come in, and she did not invite him. It was too soon. There was too much still unsaid. But when Helena lay in her bed that night, she touched her lips and remembered the feel of his kiss. And she realized, with a start, that she was no longer merely enduring this marriage. She was beginning to want it. April brought the roses. The garden burst into bloom, just as Lucian had promised, and Helena spent hours walking among the flowers, breathing in their sweetness. She had hired a gardener to restore the beds and repair the fountain, and now water sparkled in the sunlight, while bees hummed among the petals. Lucian found her there one afternoon, sitting on a stone bench with a book in her lap. I thought I might find you here. It is my favorite place in the castle. She looked up at him, shielding her eyes from the sun. Thank you for letting me restore it. It was your doing, not mine. I merely stayed out of the way. He sat beside her on the bench, closer than he would have a month ago. I have news. Oh? A letter arrived from London this morning. My solicitor has been investigating a matter for me. He hesitated. It concerns your family's debts. Helena went still. What about them? When we married, I paid the creditors in full. That was our agreement. But my solicitor has discovered something troubling. Lucian's voice was grim. Your father's debts were not entirely his own doing. Someone deliberately engineered his financial ruin. The book slipped from Helena's lap. What do you mean? I mean that your family was not merely unlucky or imprudent. Someone wanted your father to fail. Someone orchestrated a campaign of false rumors, bad investments, and carefully timed withdrawals of credit that pushed him to bankruptcy. Lucian's eyes were hard. Someone destroyed your family on purpose. Helena felt the world tilt around her. All those years of struggle, of watching her parents age before their time, of selling everything they owned, of marrying a stranger to save them. And it had been deliberate? Who? She whispered. Who would do such a thing? My solicitor does not know yet. The trail is old and carefully hidden, but there are signs pointing to someone with significant resources and a personal grudge. He took her hand. I will find them, Helena. I swear it. Why? Why would anyone want to destroy my family? We had no enemies. My father was a kind man, a gentle man. Sometimes kindness provokes the cruelest responses. Lucian's voice was dark with old knowledge. I have seen it before. Someone envied your father's reputation, or loved someone your mother had refused, or simply hated to see goodness prosper. The reasons matter less than the truth. Helena's mind was spinning. All this time, she had believed her family's misfortune was simply fate, bad luck compounded by bad decisions. But if Lucian was right, you do not have to carry this alone, Lucian said quietly. Whatever happened, whatever enemies your family had, they are my enemies now. I will not let them harm you again. She looked at him. This man she had married out of desperation, this man she was slowly, unexpectedly beginning to love, and felt tears prick her eyes. Why are you doing this? Why do you care? Because you are my wife, he said simply, and because no one should have to suffer alone. The words were not a declaration of love, but they were something close, something real. Helena leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat together in the rose garden as the sun sank low and the shadows lengthened. Something had shifted between them, something irrevocable. She only hoped it would not be destroyed by whatever truths were waiting in the darkness. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks later. Helena was in the morning room, reviewing household accounts with Mrs. McRae, when a footman entered with a silver tray. On the tray lay a single envelope, sealed with wax, the color of dried blood. A messenger brought this, Your Grace, the footman said. He said it was urgent. Helena took the envelope and felt a chill run down her spine. There was no return address, no name, only her own title written in an elegant, unfamiliar hand. She broke the seal and read the contents. Your Grace, you do not know me, but I know a great deal about you. I know about your family's debts and the mysterious circumstances of their ruin. I know about the locked room in the west wing of Stormhaven Castle, and I know the truth about the Duke of Stormhaven's first wife, a truth he has kept hidden from everyone, including you. If you wish to learn what happened to Eleanor Sterling, come to the village inn tomorrow at noon. Ask for Lady Carrington. Tell no one, especially not your husband. Burn this letter after reading. Helena read the letter twice, 3 times. Her hands were trembling. The locked room, Eleanor's death, a woman named Lady Carrington who claimed to know secrets about all of it. She should tell Lucian. She knew she should tell him. They had been growing closer, building trust, sharing confidences. If someone was trying to manipulate her, he had a right to know. But the letter had warned her not to tell him, and something in Helena, the part of her that had learned long ago not to trust anyone completely, hesitated. What if there was truth in this letter? What if Lucian had lied to her about Eleanor? What if the locked room held something darker than a grieving husband's memories? She thought about the way he had looked at her in the rose garden, the way he had kissed her, the way he had promised to help her find whoever destroyed her family, and she thought about the locked door at the end of the west wing corridor. She did not burn the letter. She folded it carefully and hid it in the pocket of her gown. She needed to know the truth, whatever it cost her. The village inn was small and dim, smelling of ale and wood smoke. Helena arrived alone, having slipped away from the castle under the pretense of visiting a tenant farmer. She wore a plain cloak with the hood pulled up, and she kept her head down as she entered. Your Grace, a woman's voice, smooth and cultivated. I was hoping you would come. Lady Carrington was older than Helena had expected, perhaps 50, with silver-threaded dark hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore a traveling dress of deep burgundy and carried herself with the confidence of a woman accustomed to wealth and power. Who are you? Helena demanded. And what do you know about my family and the Duke? Sit down, Your Grace. This is a conversation best had over tea. I do not want tea. I want answers. Lady Carrington smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You remind me of myself at your age. Very well. Answers then. She leaned back in her chair. I know that your father was ruined by a man named Lord Ashworth, who held a grudge against him for 30 years. I know that Ashworth used bribery, forgery, and outright theft to destroy your family. And I know that the Duke of Stormhaven has been aware of Ashworth's crimes for years, because Ashworth is his cousin, and the Duke has been protecting him. The room seemed to tilt. Helena gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. That is a lie. Is it? Ask your husband about the letters he received from Ashworth's solicitors. Ask him about the payments made to keep your family's creditors at bay, not out of kindness, but out of guilt. Ask him why he really chose you as his bride. He chose me because I was recommended to him. He chose you because he knew what his cousin had done, and he wanted to assuage his conscience. Lady Carrington's voice was relentless. Your marriage was not a transaction, Your Grace. It was a bribe, a way for the Duke to buy forgiveness for sins he did not commit but enabled nonetheless. Helena felt as though the ground had opened beneath her feet. Why should I believe anything you say? Because I have proof. Lady Carrington reached into her reticule and withdrew a packet of letters. These are correspondence between the Duke and Lord Ashworth. They detail Ashworth's scheme against your family and the Duke's knowledge of it. Read them yourself. Helena stared at the letters. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them. Do not take my word for it, Lady Carrington said. Ask your husband about the locked room in the West Wing. Ask him why he keeps it locked, and what he is hiding there. If he tells you the truth, you will know I am lying. But if he lies to you— She let the sentence hang. Who are you? Helena whispered. Why are you doing this? Because I was like you once, Lady Carrington said quietly. A young woman, married to a man who kept secrets. A man who pretended to love me while destroying everything I cared about. I want you to know the truth before it is too late. Helena stood abruptly, the letters clutched in her hand. I need to think. Do not let him deceive you, Your Grace. Men like the Duke of Stormhaven are masters of deception. They make you believe they are broken and in need of saving, when really, they are the ones who do the breaking. Helena fled the inn without looking back. She read the letters in her chambers, her hands trembling so violently she could barely make out the words. They were damning. The handwriting was unmistakably Lucian's. She recognized it from the letter he had sent her before their marriage, and the contents were exactly as Lady Carrington had described. Cousin, I have received word of your activities in Yorkshire. The Montgomery family is known to me, and I must insist you cease your campaign against them immediately. Whatever grievance you hold against the father, the daughters should not suffer for it. And another, dated later. I have arranged for the Montgomery debts to be purchased and held in trust. They will not be called in. But you must understand, Ashworth, that my protection comes at a price. If you ever speak of what you did, I will see you ruined as thoroughly as you ruined them. Protection, not justice, not restitution. Lucian had known what his cousin was doing, and he had covered it up. He had used his wealth to shield a criminal and called it protection. The man who had kissed her in the rose garden, the man who had promised to help her find the truth, the man she was beginning to love. It had all been a lie. Helena sat on the edge of her bed, the letters scattered around her, and felt something inside her shatter into pieces she did not know how to put back together. She confronted him that evening. She found him in his study, as she had on that first night so many months ago. He looked up when she entered, and his expression shifted from welcome to alarm when he saw her face. Helena? What is wrong? She threw the letters onto his desk. Explain these. He looked down at them, and the color drained from his face. Where did you get these? A woman named Lady Carrington. She says you have been protecting the man who destroyed my family. She says our marriage was a bribe to ease your guilty conscience. Helena's voice was shaking, but she refused to cry. Tell me it is not true. Tell me she is lying. Lucian was silent for a long moment, then he closed his eyes. I cannot. The words hit her like a physical blow. You knew. All this time, you knew. I knew that my cousin was responsible for your family's ruin. I did not know until after it was done. I swear that to you. When I discovered the truth, I confronted him. I forced him to stop. I made arrangements to protect your family from further harm. He opened his eyes and looked at her with desperate intensity. But I did not turn him over to the authorities. He is my cousin, my blood. I could not destroy him. You could not destroy him, so you let my family remain destroyed instead? I tried to make it right. The marriage contract, the settlement of your debts, that was my way of giving your family back what they lost. A bribe, Helena said bitterly. Just as Lady Carrington said, you bought yourself a wife and called it justice. It was not like that. He rose from his chair and moved toward her. Helena, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you married me out of guilt? That everything between us has been built on a lie? No. Yes. I do not know. He ran his hands through his hair, his composure cracking. When I proposed to you, I told myself it was a practical arrangement. I needed an heir. You needed money. It was simple. But then I met you, and you were not simple at all. You were brave and kind and infuriatingly honest, and He stopped, struggling for words. I began to feel things I had not felt in years. I began to care for you. That was not a lie. How can I believe anything you say? Helena's voice broke. You kept a locked room in this castle that I was forbidden to enter. You lied about knowing what happened to my family. You let me believe I was alone in the world, when all along you knew the truth. How can I trust you now? Let me show you the room. His voice was raw. Let me show you what I have been hiding. If you still cannot forgive me after that, I will not blame you. But please, let me show you. Helena wanted to refuse. She wanted to walk out of this castle and never look back. But something in his eyes stopped her, something that looked like the same desperation she felt in her own heart. Fine, she said. Show me. The locked room at the end of the West Wing corridor was not a storage room. It was a nursery. Lucian unlocked the door with a key he wore around his neck and pushed it open. Candles flickered to life, revealing a room frozen in time, a cradle carved from dark wood, a rocking chair beside a window that overlooked the sea, tiny garments folded in a chest, a mobile of painted stars hanging from the ceiling. Helena stepped inside and felt her anger falter. What is this? This is where my son was supposed to sleep. Lucian's voice was barely a whisper. I built it for him. For Eleanor. I wanted everything to be perfect. And then they died, and I could not bear to look at it. So I locked the door and told myself I would never open it again. Helena walked slowly through the room, touching the cradle, the tiny clothes, the stars. Her heart ached despite everything. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand. He stood in the doorway, his face half in shadow. I am not a good man, Helena. I have made terrible choices. I protected my cousin because I did not want to lose any more family. I did not tell you the truth because I was afraid you would leave. I am a coward and a fool, and I have spent 5 years hiding from the world because I could not face what I had done. He took a step toward her. But you made me want to stop hiding. You made me want to be brave again. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I am asking for it anyway. I am asking you to give me a chance to make this right. Helena stared at him, her emotions warring inside her. The anger was still there, burning hot and bitter. But so was something else. Something that had been growing for months and could not be extinguished by a single betrayal, however deep. Lady Carrington, she said. Who is she? Why does she hate you? I do not know. I have never heard that name before. He frowned. But if she has been spreading lies about me, not all of it was lies. No, not all of it. He met her eyes. The truth about my cousin is real. I did protect him. I was wrong, but I never married you out of guilt. I married you because I was alone and afraid, and something in your letter told me you were the kind of person who could teach me how to live again, and I was right. Helena turned away, her mind spinning. I need time. I need to think. Take all the time you need. His voice was quiet. I will be here. I will wait as long as it takes. She left him standing in the nursery, surrounded by the ghosts of his past. She did not know if she could ever truly forgive him, but she was beginning to realize that leaving him might be impossible. The truth about Lady Carrington came out 3 days later. Helena had spent those days in a fog of confusion and grief, barely leaving her chambers, speaking to no one. She had written to her sister but could not bring herself to send the letter. She had walked in the rose garden but found no comfort in the flowers. On the third morning, a messenger arrived with an urgent letter for Lucian. Helena happened to be in the great hall when he read it, and she saw his expression shift from confusion to cold, hard fury. "What is it?" she asked, despite herself. "Lady Carrington." He looked up, and his eyes were blazing. "Her real name is Margaret Ashworth. She is my cousin's wife, the wife he abandoned 10 years ago. She has been seeking revenge against him ever since, and she apparently decided that destroying my marriage was part of that revenge." Helena felt the world tilt. "She lied to me? She told you enough truth to make the lies believable?" Lucian crumpled the letter in his fist. "Yes, I protected my cousin. Yes, I kept his crimes secret. But I did not marry you out of guilt, or as a bribe. I married you because—" He stopped, struggling. "Because what?" "Because I was falling in love with you, before I even met you." The words came out in a rush, raw and desperate. "Your letter. The way you wrote about your family, with such fierce devotion. The way you accepted my cold terms without flinching. I read that letter 100 times, and each time I felt something crack inside me, something I thought was dead." Helena stared at him. "You never told me. I did not know how. I did not think I deserved to feel it." He took a step toward her. "I have done terrible things, Helena. I have kept terrible secrets. But the one thing I have never lied about is what I feel for you. I love you. I have loved you since the moment I saw you standing in that cold little chapel, marrying a stranger to save your family. I love you, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it if you will let me." The great hall was silent. Somewhere in the distance, a servant was humming. The fire crackled in the hearth, and Helena felt the last of her walls crumble. "You love me," she repeated, as though testing the words. Desperately, hopelessly, completely. He reached for her hand, and this time she let him take it. "I know I do not deserve you. I know you have every right to walk away, but if you stay, I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of you." Helena looked at him, this man who had been so cold, so distant, so broken, and saw the truth written in every line of his face. He was not pretending. He was not manipulating. He was simply a man who had made terrible choices, and was trying, finally, to be better. "I am not perfect either," she said quietly. "I came to this marriage with my own secrets, my own fears. I told myself I was sacrificing myself for my family, but the truth is, I was also running away, running from the shame of our poverty, running from the pity of our neighbors, running from a life that had become unbearable." She met his eyes. "You are not the only one who has been hiding. Then let us stop hiding." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. "Let us face whatever comes together, the truth about my cousin, the schemes of Lady Carrington, the ghosts of our pasts, all of it, together." Helena felt tears slide down her cheeks. "Together," she whispered. He pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly. His embrace was strong and warm and real, and she buried her face against his chest, and let herself cry for everything she had lost, and everything she had found. "I love you," she said, the words muffled against his coat. "I did not expect to, I did not want to, but I do. I know." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "I have known for weeks. You are not very good at hiding it." She laughed, despite her tears. "You are infuriating." "And you love me anyway?" "Yes." She pulled back to look at him. "I love you anyway." The weeks that followed were not easy. There were long conversations, painful confessions, and moments of doubt that crept in like shadows at dusk. Helena learned the full truth about Lucian's cousin, how Lord Ashworth had destroyed her family's fortune out of a decades-old grudge, how Lucian had discovered the truth too late to prevent the damage, how he had chosen to protect his last remaining family member rather than expose him to justice. "I should have stopped him," Lucian admitted one evening as they sat together in the rose garden. "I should have turned him over to the authorities the moment I learned what he had done. But he was my cousin, my blood, and I had already lost so much." "I understand," Helena said quietly. "I do not agree with your choice, but I understand it. Loving someone does not make their sins disappear. No, but it does make them harder to condemn." He took her hand. "I have written to Ashworth. I told him that if he ever contacts you or your family again, I will expose everything. I will not protect him anymore. What did he say? He called me a fool and a traitor. He said I was choosing a woman over my own blood. Lucian's mouth curved in a humorless smile. I told him that was exactly what I was doing, and that I had never made a better choice in my life. Helena leaned her head against his shoulder. What about Lady Carrington? Or Margaret Ashworth? Or whatever her real name is? She has disappeared. My solicitor believes she fled to the continent after her plan failed. She wanted to destroy me, because she could not destroy my cousin directly. I was collateral damage. He paused. I am sorry you were caught in the middle. I am not. She looked up at him. If she had not come, we might never have had these conversations. We might have gone on pretending, hiding from each other, never truly knowing what we had. You are remarkably optimistic for someone whose family was ruined by my relatives. I am remarkably practical, she smiled. Your relatives may have destroyed my family's fortune, but you gave them a future, and you gave me something I never expected to find. What is that? A home. She met his eyes. Not a castle, not a title, not a fortune. A home. With you. Lucian kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, and when they finally pulled apart, there were tears on both their faces. I do not deserve you, he said. Stop saying that. You deserve happiness as much as anyone. You have punished yourself long enough. Then help me stop. He cupped her face in his hands. Help me learn to be happy. I will, she promised. Every day, for the rest of our lives. Summer came to the Highlands, and with it a transformation that seemed almost magical. The castle, once so dark and cold, began to feel like a home. The locked nursery was opened and aired, its tiny clothes and painted stars a reminder of what had been lost, but also of the future that still lay ahead. Lucian hosted gatherings for the local gentry, and even attended the village fair, walking among his tenants with Helena on his arm. The people of Stormhaven, who had once feared their reclusive duke, began to greet him with genuine warmth, and Lucian, who had once believed himself incapable of joy, discovered that he was wrong. I never knew it could be like this, he said one afternoon, watching Helena help a tenant's child learn to read. I never knew life could be so full. It was always full, Helena said. You just were not looking. I was looking in the wrong places. He came to stand beside her. I was looking backward, at what I had lost, instead of what I still had. You taught me to look forward. And what do you see? She asked. In the future. He was quiet for a moment. Then he knelt before her, right there in the village schoolroom, with the child watching wide-eyed and the sunlight streaming through the windows. I see you, he said. I see us. I see children who have your courage and my stubbornness. I see a life built on truth instead of secrets, love instead of duty, hope instead of fear. He took her hand. Helena Montgomery Sterling, Duchess of Stormhaven, will you continue to be my wife, not because a contract demands it, but because you choose it, because you choose me? The child gasped. The teacher in the corner pretended not to be listening, and Helena felt her heart expand until it seemed too large for her chest. Yes, she said. 1,000 times yes. He rose and kissed her, and the child cheered, and somewhere in the distance, the church bells began to ring. In the years that followed, Lucian kept his promises. He exposed his cousin's crimes and saw him brought to justice, not through vengeance, but through the slow, patient workings of the law. Lord Ashworth lost his fortune, his reputation, and his freedom. It was not enough to undo the damage he had caused, but it was something. Helena's family flourished. Her father's health improved. Her mother, miraculously, began to recover. Her sister Margaret married a kind young vicar. Her brother Thomas went to university and became a barrister, determined to fight for justice for others who had been wronged. And at Stormhaven, life bloomed. The roses grew thicker and more beautiful with each passing year. The castle filled with laughter and music and the pitter-patter of small feet. 2 children, a boy with his father's grey eyes and a girl with her mother's copper hair, ran through the corridors, where once only shadows dwelled. Helena never forgot the sacrifice she had made on that cold December day. She never forgot the fear and desperation that had driven her to marry a stranger. But she came to see that sacrifice not as a loss, but as a beginning. She had married the cruel duke to save her family. And in saving them, she had saved him too. If you believe that love can heal even the most broken of hearts, leave a comment telling us your favorite moment between Lucian and Helena. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another unforgettable love story.